So we are officially recording, and welcome to the May version installment. I haven't quite figured out what to call it yet, of 100 Pictures of Honey reading series. I'm Donna Boyer, I'm your host, and tonight you are in for a treat with three very special readers. I'm going to drop one more time sorry, I'm trying to read the chat. Awana is using a transcript. Never mind. So I just wanted to, I just figured I didn't miss anything. Okay. So I'm just going to drop one more time information in the chat for where to find us online, for the people that joined us a little bit later, and hope that you will follow us and, find more readers, or go to our YouTube channel and watch our first 4 months, which were amazing readings. And I have no doubt that tonight is going to be any different. I know we have a little bit of a small audience tonight, so I apologize to the readers for that. But those of you that are here are really in for a treat. So we are going to hear this evening from Sadie Shorr-Parks, from Tommy Dean, and from Sally Rosen Kindred. So our first reader is going to be Sadie, and I'm going to pop her official as soon as I get this done correctly. Sorry, I'm still not great at trying to be the chat monitor and the host at the same time. All of Sadie's information, including a link to purchase her book, Honey Month, and her website are in the chat. I met Sadie basically through this series before I read a lot of her work, and then had a really lovely serendipitous outdoor lunch with her at AWP as we were both looking for somewhere to sit and grab lunch. But then the work I have read of Sadie's, what I really love about it is that her poems crackle. There's a wit and an energy to them that I admire. There's a plain spokenness that always has something else kind of lurking just underneath it. And since she uses cicadas as an image in some of her poems, that seems very appropriate. And a perfect example of that is the first one, a great first line from her poem Rat King Coal, which I really love, which is, if this city is built on coal, then soon this town will all be diamonds. So without further ado, I'm going to present Sadie Shorr-Parks.
Thank you for such a kind introduction. That was so lovely. I'm so happy to be here tonight with everybody. The book is called Honey Month, so it seems very fitting for the title of the series. So yeah, I'm really excited to read for you guys tonight. All the poems I'm going to be reading are going to be from Honey Month. And can you guys all hear me okay? Yeah? Okay, great. So the first poem I'm going to read tonight is called Lunacy. And this was actually published with Painted Bride Quarterly originally. So, Lunacy. There are pen marks across the sky, black from a laundry accident. I'm in my backyard hanging clothes on a line. No, I'm online imagining hanging laundry. I can see a lilac dusk in a red rug. I can see my backyard full of baklava trees. I can predict a gray night sky, light pollution pooling around the stadium, the moon out of frame. Last night, I saw the true moon suspended in my bedroom mirror. So I gasped and I asked, why am I getting so lucky? And I wished, stay with me through this jag or till I'm done watching. And I chanted, come up my porch steps, come up my porch steps, walk through my screen door. I can be withholding too. This next poem is called Samson. So it's Samson. Samson finagled out of his hair duties. I did not. I peel a row of eyelashes off the heart of my heel and sit unreformed on my vanity chair. Was it self-sabotage? Do I fear realizing my full power? I am here to consume. Outside, a breathing city invites me in. Once you've caged some electricity, it's easy to get a man to fall in love with you. It's difficult to maintain that without suffering. You already know that from the day we met. When I ran towards you, disappearing and reappearing between the campus light posts before arriving in your arms. I let you lift the veil of moonlight off my face. You hunger for me like you do all trouble, mischief, and sorrow. Such poor behavior, flannel man, can let danger into your den. And we rolled recklessly everywhere that year. Love overtook us both. What can you take from the man that loves you? Everything. Everybody already knows that. This next poem is called Lifestyles of Walters. Okay. The lifestyle of Walters. Walters are always so vengeful and pro-circumcision, always too Old Testament, needy from years of being so low in the alphabet. Watch any YouTube video. In October, our Walter is online, once again screaming, "Here is a real world man," and hitting his chest. Later, he feels all so sorry for threatening the post office. He falls, his head in his hands, my hand on his shoulder. Walter needs a public TV show and some help too. Next week, Walter is back on the thrash. He knows the trash man's plan to plunder his black bag of secrets. Come dawn, I find him running down the pig road, dust up to his kneecaps. It's American greed, or it's a marvel, one man holding 30 bags of trash. This next poem is called The Even Keeled, and it's about my sophomore year in college. All right, so The Even Keeled. I was motivated, not inspired, my sophomore year, unplugging everything, squeezing my friends' hands like we're all already pretty before tossing my lit, unfinished Marlboro off the deck into the yard. It extinguished itself in the dew. Remember me burning through my terrible 20s. I stopped for breath when I got to West Virginia. Now I'm marked by my inertia. I saw a jet take out the yellow sun and I continued. This next poem is called Magma. And I guess it's a bit of a love poem. So, Magma. Time tapped forward as constant as a dial tone. The spaces of not you have been filled, I wrote. It's funny, isn't it, how even a short story can have a long ending. And we were always mostly endings. Now I know that. But at the start, drunk on farm rooftops, we looked about as endless as the highway that stretched like hot toffee out of Harrisonburg. We didn't know that one false step meant falling. I read that the energy from the Big Bang still heats the earth. 5 billion years have passed. Rocks and mountains have appeared and dissolved again like ice into whiskey. And the core of the planet is still molten from its creation, even when the rind was laced with dew. I've picked the last parts out of me, like porcupine quills, I added, one particularly dewy day. Inside, my core was burning. So this next poem is called Die at Home. And one of the themes in Honey Month has to do with like families and eating and that sort of stuff. So that's what this poem is about. Die at home. In my home, the girls go all bone. At home, our girls reduced to the bone, and the men chop shallots and toss them into the pot, and the brothers dissolve into the broth. I left, I could, did, never dipped back in, though, with help in monumental changes in most every aspect of my natural personality. I do sort of see myself regaining. I do somewhat see myself again. Okay, this next poem is called Night Garden. It comes near the end of the book. As the book sort of deals a lot with how we interact with our environment and the ways that we sometimes feel afraid of it or guilty towards it or enjoying it. And this is a more of a celebration of nature poem. So Night Garden. The genre of thought has limits. Like this cape is just for the house, But tonight I'm full of abandon and already barefoot in a field of bath mat moss, muttering, intuition is not a frivolous itch. When walking a tight line of English ivy or dipping an oar into the rippling melody of a nightingale, I'm right to question the mischief of rats nesting in the Virginia creeper. But if laying in a clover patch under misty chiffon air, my gut yanks me towards death-defying feats, I am prepared to abide when the black lake croaks and the white blooms unencrypt, and I ask only to be uncovered from my own heaping expectations. So this is the last poem. I think it's the last poem in the book. It's called Fat, I'm Relieved. And I guess it also is sort of a conclusion poem that ties together some things. So yeah, Fat, I'm Relieved. Okay. Fat, I'm relieved to see my full moon face each morning. I used to sneak under my cheekbones, ramble meanly, composed of hooks. I'm different now. I'd point to my bin of sewing projects under my super modern table. It was that pastel swirl in the sky. I could have fallen to my knees. Red lengths of light surrounded us. I said, crumble now, cracked earth. I know I love him. A breeze passed us like time over a valley. At one time, I pushed my blonde hair around and judged the women who rode the L alone, the white sneakers of long shifts. Connected cars rattled and whistled, blowing over me, and I stood beneath the tracks, leaning my head on a chain link fence, throat to 45th Street, watching my breath fold into iced air. The draft in my bat attic reminds me of this. It's fine to feel like an artist at night. All right, that's all from me tonight. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I can't wait to hear the other speakers.
Thank you so much, Sadie. The music in your poems and the energy in your poems is I think just delightful and very different than our other readers tonight, and very different from other poets. So I highly recommend that if you liked those poems that you heard from Sadie, that you use the link in the chat to get her book. She's holding it up again so that you can see how pretty it is. Such great poems. Thank you so much. Our next reader is going to be Tommy Dean. So let me drop his official bio, links, information, and such into the chat. I first met Tommy. I took a workshop with Tommy at a Barrel House conference about Flash. And I don't write a lot of Flash, but the one I wrote in Tommy's workshop is one that's been published. So I highly recommend all of Tommy's workshops if you haven't taken one. And I've followed his Flash ever since, very happily reading whatever he's publishing, and was very excited to get his book Hollows. I pick it up at AWP. I love Tommy's stories because they're all very human, and they all really deal with very real characters that are dealing with the difficulty of being human. And one of my favorite stories in the book, which is a very short Flash, which has a great title. He's got great titles too, called A Pondering of Velocity When You're Too Scared to Move. Just brilliantly takes something that everyone who's been a parent experiences, that moment you let your toddler or your young one start to kind of walk away from you on their own, and renders it just so palpable. I'm just going to read like one line from that. So I count the steps in my mind, brace myself to sprint, holding back my body, because this is independence, this imaginary tether I've created, a facsimile of trust, when why would I ever let him go? And so I'm hoping that we're going to hear from the Hollows and some of Tommy's other wonderful characters, and I know that you won't be disappointed. So Tommy, take it away.
Wow, thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you for having me here. Sadie, that poetry was amazing. I'm not sure how I'm gonna follow that up, but I'm gonna give it my best. It looks like we're in a room full of poets as well, so I'll try not to stink up the room with too much narrative in some ways. But yeah, thank you. I'm excited. I think I'm going to start by reading A Pondering of Velocity When You're Too Scared to Move. I don't think I've ever read this one out loud, so this should be fun. So, here we go. A Pondering of Velocity When You're Too Scared to Move. My son stands at the end of the driveway, the tip of his rubber soles balancing in the shadow between roadway and cracked cement. Safety an invisible line, I think, I demand, that I can control by saying, be careful. But the wind, the universe, the commanding variables of our lives don't give a fuck. So I count the steps in my mind, brace myself to sprint, holding back my body because this is independence. This imaginary tether I've created, a facsimile of trust, when why would I ever let him go? The road is too scary, a version of a video game where we don't respond. We don't rematerialize to make the same mistakes again, where we learn the algorithm of nature of drivers distracted by another algorithm of beeps and chimes, alerts of someone asking for money, wanting attention, that damn it, this driver can't afford to give in this tenth second of my son's life, of my life, a patterned doomsday of coiled, muscled emotion that borders on mania, released in the fragile prayer of being careful. A haunting from the living, those 10 feet that one day I'll never bridge, or jump, or stumble through, or climb, or plow ahead, hands on my knees, a gap yawning. Awesome. Yeah, like a lot of writers, I write a lot about my own fears. So definitely was sitting out in the driveway once watching my son, and that's what came to mind. So let's see, what else do I want to read? I have them all marked, so I'm gonna try to find them really quickly. This is another song that's inspired by my son. Apparently, a lot of little kids do this. They talk about these other lives or these other people that they lived with. And it really freaked me and my wife out. And my son would just keep telling us about his old home with his old parents, and there were tractors and deers. There were deer. And we live in a very like small kind of suburban city here in Indiana. So yeah, none of that made sense. So I wrote a story about it. This one was published by Atlas and Alice a year ago, 2 years ago. Our 4-year-old tells stories, usually unprompted, about his old house, this former life he had before he was with us. He lived on a farm on a country road with John Deere tractors. The deer with the sprig of white tail gathered at the edge of the woods, and he would watch them with his old parents, the ones before. My wife and I huddle in our bed, elbows and knees connected like the intertwined roots of trees, a mass of skin and bones. We investigate the corners of our room, flinching as the house settles into its midnight dreams. These stories can't be real, right? She asked. I'm tempted to contact a forensic artist. The detail is so creepy, I say. Did you, she asked, curling her head into my shoulder, have any previous lives? You think he got it from me? I can't even remember yesterday. I flick off the light and we lie there in silence, listening to the house contracting around us, waiting for the dreams about farms to take us under for the night. When I'm alone with my son, scaling the play structure at the park by the lake, seagulls combing the beach for dropped Cheetos, I ask him about this previous life. I'd like to know if these other parents, this ghost father, is a better parent than me. Did he buy you ice cream? Did he take you to the park? Did he dry you off with the soft towels after a bath? The answers come like heartbeats. No, no, no. The question I want to ask but can't, a wave lapping in and onto the sand, leaving bits of seaweed, fish scales, and filaments of oil from jet skis and motorboats. Did they love you more? Thanks. Let's see. Did I want to read next? Okay, this one's called An Approximation of Melody. I was invited by New Flash Fiction Review to kind of do a tribute to Meg Pocrass, who's been a great mentor for me when I first started Flash. She was very generous and very helpful. Um, so she published a story with us in Fractured called Love Street Blues, and I wrote a story after that, kind of the way that poets do in some ways. So this was me trying to be Mick Pocrass, but like in my own kind of voice or way. So we'll see. Who's also a very good poet, by the way. An approximation of melody. I wanted to live. Oh, I should say that this point of view is from a female character as well. I think that'll help make sense. I wanted to live on an alley when I grew up. My nose flush against the cool glass, shadows cast over darkened brick, bottles broken, and the shuffle of running feet. The smell of sewage and greasy food wafting into the room, mixing with the ba-dum-ba of the Law and Order score. My parents wedged into their recliners for the evening, just conscious enough to stop me from escaping. Promises made to ourselves in the night sweat of our own rooms are the lost songs of future geniuses. Even if, in this house, my name is rarely spoken. The guitar was my first love, and I played until the blood seeped from underneath my fingernails. I strummed the strings on sick days and on weekends when I stayed out too late, my music an approximation of melody. I held the wooden body close, pretended to know what love was, so I could break my own heart until it beat like the powdery wings of a moth convinced by the safety of the light. I grew up pill-addled, sucking the chalky residue of Vicodin and Percocet until the tendonitis of phantom pain rattled in my chest. I pawned my guitar, the strings as slick as the bald tires of my boyfriend's cars, each one adding more miles to a body that had long run out of gas. Hold me by the neck, press on the nodules of my spine, and play my harmony until the world sings along. The buskers surround me, the street corner a diagonal from where I'm supposed to be. I stand in alleys, these not quite streets that I love, pressing my face against the outside of the glass, looking for a girl like myself, the one I used to be. I rest my hands on empty windowsills, reaching in my throat, catching, slick with notes unsung, breathing away those last melodies, a ghost of someone's future past. Okay. I'm gonna read this one. This one's called Wave. It's probably my most like trying to be a poet, so we'll see if this holds up. One of the reasons I love this story is that I wrote it on the plane coming back from an AWP in like 2016 or 17, and we know how hard it can be to write on a plane. Um, so I wrote it, and I kind of love it. It was published originally in the Journal of Compressed Creative Arts, run by the very fantastic Randall Brown. It is called Wave. You've started talking through the picket fence of your teeth, drawing me closer with every lisping word. Your breath smells of wilting dandelions, a sugary spike that pokes at the nerve endings in my toes. Your pleas like broken cartilage wrapped in cellophane as you decide if this is the last time you'll leave me. Say it, I beg, but your nose only whistles the tune we haven't yet placed on the map of your soiled emotions. I beat at your chest, but the birdcage only rattles, keyless, fragile as plastic fork tines, yet unyielding. Anything unbreakable I find endlessly irritating. Maybe love is one knob turn of agitation away from complete surrender, but that would be too easy for people like us. I'll say it then, my mouth opening, teeth bridging the gap between object emptiness and the sated timbre of intimacy decoded into language. The fuel needle of my need for you dips, trails, hitches like a hiccup never expressed. Because your tears won't stop the goddamn door from slamming shut or the echo that reverberates into space. A place where all I can see is the backlit shadow of your back, bent like those unbreakable cones given away on picture day. Boys like you worrying them until they snapped. You push my head to your chest, but keep walking until we're outside. Night vision lit, my blood vessels traitorously flowing towards you. An earthly gravity I regret. I start to yell, but you say that you only want the quiet parts of me. I stomp, I clap, I shout, dancing the off rhythm way that follows the earthquakes of your departures. Every month I take down a new door, leaving them on the curb for the trash man, small offerings to the spirits of the unnamed barriers. Cabinet doors pop from their hinges, exposing industrial cleaners and solvents, cups from shuttered restaurants, plates with scratches from your overzealous stabbing of beef and potatoes. The Disney cups bought at garage sales for nickels while we joked about needing them for the children, the ones the second marriage was supposed to provide. The cartoon faces twisting toward garish impressions of joy you obviously never felt. When you stand on the porch, your hand pushing through the empty doorway, I think of snorkeling in Jamaica. How you almost drowned, your lungs mistaking water for air, your arms retracing from the fish below, sure you were about to be bitten. That's autobiographical. That was me. I want to give you a tour of my obsession, but you've always hated mania, and I won't apologize. You've come back, I say, but you're still working out how I can dare to live in a state of unprotected bodily harm. I've gotten rid of the alarm, too, the baseball bat hidden under your side of the bed. You've come back? This time the question closes to the frequency of a liquid metal being struck by the bow of a violin. And you wave and you wave and you. Thanks. Maybe just like one or two more. I can't imagine actually reading for 15 minutes. So, let's do two more. The last one will be really short. I want to read um Hollows, I think. So Hollows is a story that I tried to write for like, I don't know, 5 to 7 years in very many different versions. It's kind of a take on something that kind of really happened in my life, and I tried to write it in nonfiction, but it wasn't enough distance. So it wasn't until I turned it fiction that it felt like something that I could portray as characters and make real, because I'm not a creative nonfiction person. I think I've only like wrote one or two CNF pieces. So I love this story, but it was also a really beguiling one to write as well. This one was originally published at the Lascaux Review. So this is Hollows. We're lying in the middle of a cracked country road, fireflies blinking, a message we're too human to understand. The gravel is hot on my shoulders, the sweat gathering and pasting grit from the tarmac onto my elbows and calves. My chest heaves from chasing you earlier, my throat raw from yelling your name. One look at the way your shoes are planted into the sticky surface of the road, your knees bent toward the sky, and I know this isn't a joke. You're too selfish, too heart-bent on possessing Jody like the Michael Jordan rookie card that you swear your dad bought you, but you've never let me see. Shoulder to shoulder, you wave the lit end of a cigarette too close to my face. I regret daring you to buy them, regret giving you the money, wishing we were back at your trailer instead, arguing over the best way to hold the controller of your Super NES. Your eyes are squeezed tight. I can hear you thinking her name, Jody, Jody. And because I love what you love, because I've watched you kiss her, I've watched you hold her hand, play with her hair, listen to you brag about the parts of her body that you swear only you've touched, I love her too. So I ask you what we're doing. We're dying. Can't you feel it? Your voice oozing with smoke rather than tears. No, I want to say, but there's a code here. A puzzle that expects something of me, from me, if I want to be your friend. But I feel too alive, too full of promises I've unwittingly made to myself. Promises that I'm just starting to see you won't keep. Your mother lets you stay out all night on weekends while she looks for a new ex-husband. You're 16 years old and she considers you adult enough to make your own mistakes. Heartbreak, it seems, is in your blood, passed down through a broken-limbed family tree that shakes its seeds into the wind, spreading new relatives every fresh wedding season. Basketballs glancing off the rim, car doors slamming, bike tires whizzing across broken streets, taken over by the whir of crickets. The silence between us gathers like old men at the hardware store. Lately, you've been picking fights or not saying much at all, telling me I'll never make it in the NBA, that my voice is too off key to sing along, that the song I Swear is really for girls anyway. Your other friends, the ones with cars and fathers with drug problems, would rather brag about their factory jobs and their access to alcohol, while I'm left trying to master algebra, waiting for my first kiss, shooting free throw after free throw, wondering when you'll come into town. And as the set of headlights crest the hill, the car steadily downsloping, I looked at your clenched eyes and I know that this time you might go through with it. All I can think about is the park where you've left your basketball, your house key, your jagged teenage heart. Somehow I know that words won't fix this, that it's my turn for bravery. Lying here has been a waste, that I'm more than this friendship, and that maybe you are too. But we're too young to see what's on the other side of our lives. I get to my feet and stand in the light, the high beams at this angle dominating the road ahead of us, and step over your body. For a second, I'm just another animal caught in the glare of death's future. Rubber shrieks and sears as the car grinds to a stop 3 feet in front of my shins. A voice from talk radio muffled in the cab of the car is drowned out by the squelching of windshield wipers flapping across dry glass. The car horn bleats. The driver sinks the passenger side tires into the weeded edge of the road, stopping alongside us, rolling down her window. You kids! You assholes! Your mothers! God in heaven, she sputters. You wait until the car rolls farther down the road before you start laughing. Giggles that pop out of your throat like the carbonation bubbles in a glass of soda. You look up at me, the desperate joy back in your eyes. I reach out my hand, offering to help you, but you don't take it. Don't pout, kid, you say. Nothing wrong with a little show. Am I right? You take off hard, almost skipping toward the park while I watch the taillights of the car enter town, tree leaves shaking overhead. You turn around, walking backward, unafraid of what's in front of you. Come on, you say, as if nothing has happened. I stand there not quite counting, letting the distance between us add up for as long as it can, 30, 40 yards before I start running. Thank you. One more, I think. If I can find it. Yes. This one's called Covenants. And it's kind of got a murky setting. It could be in like the Great Depression, but it also could be this apocalyptic kind of setting. It's very short. No one knew how the back windshield got cracked, but she loved the way the dying sunlight filtered through the spider-webbed fractures. If she tilted her head just right, she could see the full prism of Earth, feel the shaky tug of gravity as they spun through time and space, the truck rocketing over dirt roads, leaving behind the fields of fragile corn stalks. This was their third new town this month. They raced ahead of the swirling dust that chased them through Tornado Alley. When they made it to the Mississippi, that great snake of water, she thought they'd found the edge of the world and that surely their migration was over. But with dirt-stained hands in her lap, she pulled at a new rip in her last skirt. Her father drifted across the one-lane road, her mother's rhythmic gasp jarring him awake in time to jerk the wheel. They drove through the night toward a new destination without the promise of work or food. When they parked in the Methodist church parking lot somewhere south of Chicago, she thought maybe tonight they would find a bed with fresh sheets to sleep in. Instead, her mother shushed her, taking out the family Bible, reading about the multitude of God's covenants with his people in the accumulating twilight. There are no more promises, her mother said. Mother, what did we do this time? She asked. Her mother took her hand, skimming the rough lye soap over her fingernails. We dared, child. We dared. Thank you.
Tommy, thank you so much. I love hearing you read these stories. I've read them myself, but hearing them in your voice is amazing. And you say you're not a poet, but your use of language is just gorgeous in all of your stories. So again, I highly recommend if you want to read some good Flash. Flash is great for, when you just have a few minutes, pick up and read a story. Recommend Tommy's book. Our last reader this evening is, last but not least, definitely, is Sally Rosen Kindred. And I'll put her official bio and links to her books in the chat. My nickname for Sally is my poetry goddess, which I always put in my comments on Facebook when she's doubting herself. I've known Sally for quite some time, first online and then luckily in person. A few times we've been able to be together, including a lovely quiet sharing of a hotel room at the Sadie Wright conference a few years ago. I'm constantly in awe in Sally's work at the dexterity and precision of her language. And when someone is so precise, you would think maybe the poems would be very, but precision is usually something we associate with math, but somehow Sally's dexterity with language and the precision of her language creates mystery. And this beautiful kind of world of sound that you walk around in, and very, very much elements of the natural world and the kind of the world of fables, combined in her work. It's hard to explain. You know, I picked favorite lines from the other two. I don't even know how I would do that. I own all of Sally's books. I mean, one of my favorite openings of one of her poems from Where the Wolf, which is her most recent book, which I think she'll be reading from tonight, from Diode, is she has a poem called When You Call My Body an Odd Thing. And the opening line is, once I was the sonnet inside you, fetal, compressed, remember our thirst. I mean, come on. Like, there's someone that can do that with an opening line. I'm a goner. So you are all very lucky right now that you get to hear Sally Rosen Kindred for a whole 15 minutes.
Thank you, Donna. Yeah, I'm worried people are going to be a little disappointed now. I sounded better than I think I am. I was like, I want to just keep listening to you talk about me, but really, I want to keep hearing from Sadie and Tommy. It's been wonderful to hear your work tonight, and both your voices just terrific. You're both new to me, and I'm so excited. I want to read more. And thanks, Donna, for including me in this terrific series, and thanks everybody for coming out on a Thursday night, which is not easy to do. I think we all have Zooms get harder and harder, I think. So I am actually going to read a few poems from Where the Wolf, which came out last June from Diode Press, so it's almost a year old. I wanted to read poems I don't normally read from the book, so we'll see what happens with that. But I'm actually, and a couple of new poems that are after the book. So I'm not a spontaneous person, but I'm pretending to be. So hopefully, you know, it will be convincing in some way, and I won't pay the price. But I'm actually going to start with a poem that I often read from the book, just because it sort of introduces the collection and important characters in the book. It's actually the first poem in the book, and it's called First Night. 2 hours after my father left for good, with his wet hair lamp gleam black and his zippered bag, my mother pulsed through the house, turning off all the lights. I followed her, then sat on the rug in the dark, watching smoke twist up from her cigarette and drop small stars to burn into her blouse, black with blue roses. I did not yet believe in the kitchen to come, in bottles that lit and littered the air, tilting here from the future, that God could lay her down years on that couch. I looked up at her. I touched the rug's braid. Behind her head, 4 cold windows. Beyond them, outside, in grass moon wet with night, a ghost wolf guarded the yard. In memory, she moves now out from the alders and skirts the silver swings. Her tufts bristle in the grass. We had called her name with a snap of the switch on the glass white globe, turn of the lamp's brass key, with our breath and fingers. Without that dark wolf could never have found us. She could not have come to me, would not have felt safe. My mother was sagging already, losing stars, buckling under her story. Pain found me wolf's ghost body, gave me never and fur. I dreamed, I hid, I held, I would not tell. So that poem is the first one in the book, and it introduces a family that at its moment of fracturing, and in some ways the collection of poems follows that family in their various directions. That daughter into adulthood and motherhood, and her own mother into whatever happens after motherhood, which nothing happens after motherhood. You never stop being a mother, but whatever happens after middle age, which I'm about to learn about myself, I think. And it also introduces a wolf. There are a lot of wolves in the book, big bad wolves and werewolves, and this wolf, this she-wolf, who threads her way through many of the poems. So I'm going to sort of jump ahead and read a poem that I really never read, and you can tell why when I start reading it. It's we'll see how this goes. This poem involves the same daughter and the same mother and the same wolf just a little bit later, but it's much later in the book. It's called Let Me Pray, and that's both the title and the beginning of the first line, so I'll have to say it again, get ready. Let me pray that wolf will come as memory, pressed in a nest of dark feathers, lifting eyes of soot. Wolf will be ghosts of the body, ghosts of a body's hurt. Wolf will not know the language of hurt, the weave of a girl's, of my breath on stone. Wolf will speak only in snow and teeth, will only tell me a story rounding to curl in sleep or lapping dreams at sleep's wet flames. Not a girl's first house empty, her mother's blue rose body empty, on the red rug, brown bottles empty, and a girl's, my trembling skin. My hands on her blue rose sleeves, even after years shaking like stones. Wolf will not know the mouth of my mother's door, the lace of the path outside, the hard ripple of starlings in the air over the roof, will not know me, know my body swerve in fear. Wolf will not tell. Oh, my body, how you ruin me. Oh, wolf, how you come to take its place, that you come again into my skin, find me here, blue rose snarl and fur, is mercy and a fierce, soft beating. Phew, okay. So I made it through that one. So the rest is downhill, right? There are poems in this collection about things other than the mother and the daughter, but I'm leaning in on those tonight and reading some that I don't usually read. And there are poems about this daughter at 12, 13, 14, and her mother. And there are also poems about this daughter at 48, 49, 50, and her mother. But one of these poems is about both those things. So this poem in 2 stanzas tries to straddle 40 years. And you can let me know later if I managed it. I don't know if I did. It's called Family Portrait with Time Travel and Dirty Wings. When my mother drank, she cracked time's secrets from her blue chair, gold ignition in the glass, rolled in the mouth, and her body slowed down, her voice slowed down, her breath drew the pixels on the screen to a silver stop. Her swallow warped the drapes, and I stepped inside her stalled world, hunched, my dirty wings furled tight, hands out to take the leaves and bones, her emptied plate. I tell you, I was the only thing moving in the room. I was 12. My knuckles braced the cording air. A messenger, skin bladed by dumb bones. I shook, worn teeth, worn hush, and my mouth parting in terror's small, slow motion bloom. 40 years on, I swing a door into the room where she sits now with assistants, forgetting houses and towns, her words turning seasons to stone. Her bowl steams and the screen glints and brims. Past her shoulder, the glass frames branches that swim in tulip light. Against belief, against reason, It's May. She looks up and sees me, the only moving thing, finds a body I haven't been in years. Rose tremble, hard lips and wings, and she calls me by the name I wore petals ago, my first ribs listing, little bird. Until she sees me, I don't remember where I'm from. She tilts her glass, she's thirsty, says, "You've come all this way." So that's my time travel poem. I'm going to read one more from the book and then read a couple new things. And this is actually the last poem in the book. And it's yet another poem to my mother. It's short. It's called If I Said. If I said that you were once a doll tucked in the arm of the crooked birch, that we nested lilacs in our lashes, but in the morning we could not open our eyes, woke, but the lids were closed, woke, but the roof refused, that you could fasten your song to this cradle milk sky, that you could lie down to be named here, your bones ribbons, your bones a glass net, and your sorrow the bird in it beating. And if I said you'd always loved me, that I was your mother and you had never been mine, my lonely wren, you would believe. You would unclench your grief, let it slip from the silver tree. I say songs are a mercy, our sleep delivers the leaves, that you are not sick anymore, not sorry, and feathers, soft blooms, you remember me. I'm just going to read two more poems, and they are not in the book. They are post-book poems. This first one is, I feel like it's somewhat in conversation with the poems in the book, because there was a "Let Me Pray" in there. There's a little bit of faith and doubt going on there. And this one is called Prayer with Oaks and Visual Snow Syndrome. And visual snow syndrome is a real thing that I really have. And people afflicted or gifted with it, depending on how you think about it, see static, especially when they're looking at a kind of a monochrome, something like a whiteboard or a dark sky, they see a little static. So this is called Prayer with Oaks and Visual Snow Syndrome. The snow in my head is touching all the trees in the woods, touching the twilight bark that falls like the braids of women. The snow in my head rubs its faces into my face, then turns and rubs its faces on the gray cheeks of moss, and then laces the brown oak leaves with its not there belief in itself, its not there tears rinsed by cold. The snow is tasting the word God again and shimmering down over the moon. It alights on the rims of the junco's wings. It blinks on the crocus that turns toward me and on the late leaves that turn to sky. The snow between me and the world tastes like God, like the word God salted and multiplied into 10,000 blacklit tongues singing over the trees like ghosts of thirst and relief. Sometimes it darkens, but the doctor says this is benign. And the crows made of frost say wing blade and bone. And the prayer says flaw, flaw, flaw. The snow in my head sings, and its furling breath, its stripped wings are the mistakes of creation. The snow between me and what I believe should make me lonely, and Lord, it does. It paws with its icy let, and prays in my throat, a blessing white with thorns. Tell me, my God, in the million silver eyes of night, why such a blossom flies into so many pieces, why you are small and cold and keep falling away. All right, so I'm just going to read one more poem. I want to thank everybody again for coming tonight. It's been so great. And this is my poem that is like in progress right now. So I never do this, but Donna says it's okay. So I'm going to do it. So what I've been doing, those are poems that are completed, and this is Banana Pants. What I am doing right now is writing sonnets in 3 different voices. And this is very weird for me. I don't write sonnets that are any good, and I don't write sonnets that I share with people, but apparently tonight, all bets are off. These sonnets are in the voices of 3 different figures who are talking to each other, but you're only going to hear one, I promise. The 3 voices are a girl, and I give her first because she's normal and now you can relax. And then the next voice is a bird, and that sounds normal only while the bird's talking, and also it's trapped inside the girl. And then the 3rd voice, just in case you thought that wasn't weird enough, is Baba Yaga, the witch of Eastern European folklore with the house on the chicken legs. Yes, I'm not kidding here, guys. I keep writing these. I don't know what's happening. So I'm just going to read the first one tonight. We can all pretend that I never did this. The first one is in the voice of Baba Yaga speaking to the girl, and it is called Baba Yaga Warns You. Child, you have a bird inside. I did too, long winter gnarls ago, across the thrice 9 lands. A hurt bird and thirsty for your cornflower tears. No, you didn't make her blue feathers up, dread did. Know that when you asked, was there a bird, your mother lied. All that's slush on a sill now means as much as melting, less than what the crows said. Child, the bird is cold. I'll weave her a hush house from the driest tinder in your ribs. You'll say, give her a nest. I remember, I did too. Might be she'll ask, all cracked, what feathers smell like when they burn. Blue child, you can't answer. You're going to want to name her. Don't. You're going to love her. Blue child, don't. It's her or you. Thanks.
Wow. I told you guys. You wouldn't be disappointed. Those new poems are fantastic. And of course, your Banana Pants is like what I'm like aspire to do. So I love that you think that's Banana Pants. Thank you to all 3 of you. I love all of your work, and hearing you read it was a real treat. I'm glad we had a small audience tonight, but very appreciative if you've been watching the chat. If you haven't been watching the chat, I can send you that later. Before we end this evening, our next reading is, instead of the 3rd Thursday, going to be the 2nd Thursday of June, which is the 9th. And we are going to have Allison Pellegrin, Stacy Balkin, and Dustin Brookshire reading for us in June. And I just want to remind everyone that if you aren't yet following us on social media, all the information is there. If you've missed our other readings and want to go back and hear the 12 fabulous readers that we've had so far this year, all of the readings are recorded and then uploaded to YouTube. This recording should be there tomorrow in case you know someone who wanted to come and couldn't make it. And also, I'll just give you one more reminder, because I'm terrible at this. I'm told I'm supposed to be, asking. I do pay my readers here at the series. I think it's important for writers to be paid for their time. So if you would like to support that endeavor, there's a PayPal link for that regard. Otherwise, feel free to, I'm going to stop the recording, but you can feel free to unmute and clap and yell and say hello and whatever else you would like to do. Thank you so much for being here. We know there's always a million things going on, both online and in person now, in the literary world. So we always appreciate those of you that show up. So I'm going to stop the recording.